My name is Grace Williams, and I'm 32 years old. Some mornings, I look in the mirror and almost don't recognize the woman staring back. Hazel eyes that used to sparkle now carry shadows beneath them. Brown hair that's grown uneven because the last time I could afford a real haircut was months ago. Even my smile, the one Mark once said could light up a room, feels like a stranger I only see in old photographs. This morning was no different. The sunlight was spilling through the bedroom curtains, painting golden stripes across the side of the bed where Mark should have been. That side was cold, and had been for a long time. I traced my fingers across the empty sheets, already guessing the excuse I'd hear later. Another early meeting, a last-minute business dinner, something so important he couldn't bother to tell me before leaving. I rolled out of bed, muttering to myself, "Grace, you're going to be late." My voice sounded flat, even to me. Our kitchen still smelled faintly of last night's dinner, my attempt at chicken parmesan. Mark had taken 3 bites before putting down his fork and scrolling through his phone. "It's a bit dry, don't you think?" he'd said without looking up. I'd wanted to snap back that it's hard to follow a recipe when you can't afford all the ingredients, but instead I'd quietly cleared the plates. I sometimes wonder if that's when it started, the way I learned to swallow my words before they reached him. Work at the tech company was just as exhausting as usual. Customer service supervisor sounds nice on paper, but the reality is hours of fielding angry calls from customers convinced their crisis is the only crisis in the world. By lunch, I was sitting in my car with a granola bar, watching other people stroll past with their lattes and glossy shopping bags. Somewhere along the way, my dreams had shrunk down to this, making it through the day without crying in the break room. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number, but with a local area code. "Hello, this is Grace Williams," I answered, expecting it to be another customer who'd somehow found my personal number. "Mrs. Williams," the voice on the other end said, calm and professional. "My name is Richard Hartley. I'm calling from Hartley and Associates law firm regarding a lottery entry you submitted about 4 months ago." For a second, I thought maybe it was a scam. "I'm sorry, a what?" "A promotional lottery. You were automatically entered during a grocery store campaign. I'm pleased to inform you, Mrs. Williams, that you are the sole winner of our special jackpot." "Oh, that's nice." I tried to sound polite, already thinking it might be a few $100s. "So, how much is it?" $150 million, he said without pause. The granola bar fell right out of my hand. "I'm sorry, what?" $150 million. Before taxes, of course. We'll need to arrange a meeting to verify your identity and begin the claims process. Please understand, Mrs. Williams, this is real. Very real, and until the official announcement, it's important you keep this confidential. My hand was shaking so badly I had to switch the phone to my other ear. He walked me through verification codes, appointment times, the process. I was nodding, scribbling notes I knew I'd never need because every word was burning itself into my memory. When the call ended, I sat there for 5 minutes in stunned silence. Then the tears came. Not just happy ones, but terrified ones. It wasn't just about the money, it was about what it meant. This was freedom, a way out. My first instinct was to tell Mark. He'd been stressed about money for years, frustrated at how small our lives had become. This would fix everything. Maybe we could even be happy again. By the time I got back to my desk, I'd already made the decision. I would surprise him tonight. A real dinner, candles, wine, the wedding china. The kind of evening we used to have, back when he'd dance with me in the kitchen just because it was Tuesday. After work, I maxed out my credit card at the grocery store. Steak, fresh vegetables, his favorite dessert, a bottle of wine we could never justify buying. At home, I set the table like we were expecting royalty. Candles flickering, plates perfectly arranged, napkins folded the way I remembered from our wedding reception. As I lit the last candle, I whispered to myself, "This is it, Grace. Tonight changes everything." I didn't know then that it really would change everything, just not in the way I imagined. By 7 o'clock, everything was perfect. The smell of garlic butter and rosemary filled the house. The steak was resting just the way cooking shows always said to do it, and the wine glasses caught the candlelight in soft glints. I changed into the blue dress Mark once said made my eyes look like the ocean. I'd even put on mascara, the nice one I'd been saving for special occasions, because tonight was going to be the start of something new. At 7:02, my phone buzzed. Mark. "Hey," he said, his tone distracted. "I'm going to be late. Morrison wants to go over the quarterly projections again." I tried to keep my voice light. "How late?" "I don't know, Grace." "Late." Why do you always need exact times for everything? I made dinner, your favorite. A pause, then, just save me a plate. I'll heat it up when I get home. I hesitated, my chest tightening. Mark, I have something important to tell you. Something amazing. Can it wait? I'm literally walking into this meeting. Don't be dramatic, Grace. Whatever it is, it'll keep. The line went dead before I could answer. I sat at the table, the candles slowly burning down, the steak growing cold, the wine untouched. My excitement curdled into something heavy and sour. By 9 o'clock, I'd packed the food into containers, blew out the candles, and stood staring at the silent phone. And then it hit me. I couldn't just tell him over the phone. I wanted to see his face when he heard, wanted to remember his expression for the rest of my life. If he was at Morrison's office, I could swing by, catch them as they wrapped up, and we could go somewhere together. The downtown streets were slick with the sheen of an earlier rain, reflecting the streetlights like broken glass. I parked in the Fletcher Building garage and took the elevator up, my heart beating fast. The office was dark, the reception area empty, not even the hum of a copier or the glow of a monitor. Confusion prickled at me. Maybe they'd gone somewhere to eat? He did that sometimes with clients, dinners that somehow never showed up on his credit card statements. I headed back to my car, telling myself I'd call him in a few minutes. I just wanted to be sure I was going the right way home. That's when I made the wrong turn. The street was narrow, lined with warehouses, the kind of place where even the street lamps seemed to keep their distance. I was searching for a spot to turn around when the SUV appeared. It came from the left, tearing through the red light like it wasn't even there. 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. Just enough time for me to register the driver's face, young and wide-eyed with panic. Then the world exploded. The impact slammed me sideways. Metal screamed. Glass shattered into 1,000 tiny blades that rained across my skin. The airbag punched me in the face hard enough to make me taste blood. My head snapped against the headrest, my ribs caving in with a sickening crack. Somewhere beyond the ringing in my ears, I heard voices, urgent, scattered. Call 911! Hit and run, I think she's trapped. I tried to speak, to tell them about the lottery ticket, about Mark, about how tonight was supposed to be different. My tongue felt heavy, my breath shallow. Darkness closed in, creeping from the edges of my vision like ink spilling across a page. The last thing I heard before it swallowed me was the sound of sirens and a voice saying, "Stay with us, ma'am. Help is coming." They didn't know I was already slipping away. The first thing I noticed was the beeping, steady, rhythmic, relentless. Then came the pain, not sharp, but deep, like every inch of me had been bruised from the inside out. My eyelids felt as if they were weighted with lead, but I forced them open. The ceiling above me was a grid of white tiles, each one illuminated by cold fluorescent lights that made the world feel sterile and too bright. My throat felt dry, like sandpaper, when I tried to swallow. I turned my head and immediately regretted it. A sharp bolt of pain shot down my neck and into my ribs. I gasped. "Easy there, honey." A nurse appeared at my side, her voice warm, but her eyes carrying that tired, watchful look of someone who's seen more pain than they'd ever wanted to. She adjusted the IV in my arm with gentle hands. "You're in Riverside General," she explained. "You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. Do you remember what happened?" Fragments surfaced. The red light, the SUV, the young driver's terrified eyes, the shattering glass. "Accident?" My voice was barely a croak. She nodded. "A hit and run. You're lucky to be alive. You've got multiple contusions, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and a fractured left ankle, but you're going to be okay." Lucky? It didn't feel like it. "My husband," I rasped. "Mark Williams. Did anyone call him?" Her eyes shifted slightly, not quite meeting mine. "We've been trying your emergency contact, but no response yet. Don't worry. Sometimes these things take time." 2 days. 2 days, and he hadn't answered. Even if he was angry about me interrupting his so-called meeting, surely the hospital calling would have gotten his attention. "Could you try again, please?" She gave a reassuring nod and stepped away. When she returned 20 minutes later, she held the phone out to me. "I have him on the line." My fingers trembled as I took it. "Mark?" "Grace," his voice was flat, almost irritated. "I'm in the hospital. There was an accident, a hit-and-run driver." "Gracie, I can't deal with this right now." The words hit harder than the SUV had. "What? Mark, I'm hurt. I've been unconscious for 2 days. And what am I supposed to do about it? I'm in the middle of something important." I felt my heart squeeze. "I need you here, please. And I I still have that news to tell you. I don't have time for this, Grace. And I certainly don't have money for medical bills because you can't even cross the street safely. Figure it out yourself. The line went dead. For a moment, I just stared at the phone, the silence in my ear almost deafening. The nurse gently took it from me, her face carefully neutral. Men sometimes react strangely to stress, she offered quietly. He'll come around. But he didn't. The next days blurred together in a haze of physical therapy sessions that left me crying from pain, tasteless hospital meals, and long nights staring at the ceiling replaying that phone call. The lottery ticket, my secret, sat in my recovered purse in the bedside drawer, the paper edges pressing against the envelope like a heartbeat. $150 million. Enough to change everything. And my husband hadn't even bothered to show up. I didn't know it then, but that absence would be the first thread unraveling the life I thought we had. It was day 5 when Rachel burst through my hospital room door, her dark hair still tangled from travel and her face tight with worry. "Grace, oh my God," she gasped, setting her purse down like it weighed 100 pounds. "I just got back from my work trip. I saw the news report about the accident. Why didn't Mark call me?" I stared at the blanket pooled around my lap, my fingers twisting in the fabric. "He's been busy." Rachel froze mid-step. "Busy? Grace, you've been in the hospital for almost a week. Busy isn't an excuse." "Please," I murmured, "not now." But Rachel has never been good at letting things go. She sat on the edge of my bed, reached into her bag, and pulled out her phone. "You need to see something. I'm sorry, but you do." Her voice had that careful, almost brittle quality that made my chest tighten before I even looked. She unlocked her phone and turned the screen toward me. It was an Instagram post. Mark, in a tuxedo, at Romano's, the expensive Italian place we could never afford, not even for anniversaries. His arm was around a young woman with sleek black hair and a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Her hand rested possessively on his chest, a diamond ring catching the light. The caption read, "Celebrating our engagement with my beautiful Sofia. Sometimes you have to clear out the old to make room for the new. #blessed, #new beginnings." The date stamp was 3 days after my accident. I stared so hard my vision blurred. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We're still married." Rachel's lips pressed into a thin line. She swiped, revealing more photos. Mark and Sofia at a jewelry store. Mark and Sofia laughing over cocktails at a rooftop bar. Mark and Sofia touring what looked like a high-rise apartment. All posted within the last week. "He's telling people you two separated months ago," Rachel said. "That you're getting divorced. That you left him." My stomach churned. "That's not true. None of it is true." "I know," she said softly. But he's putting it out there, Grace, and people believe what they see online." I leaned back against the pillows, the air in the room suddenly too heavy. "He can't be engaged. We're still legally married. That's—" I stopped myself before saying bigamy. Rachel studied my face, her eyes narrowing. "What were you about to tell him before the accident? You've mentioned it twice now." The lottery ticket flashed in my mind like a neon sign. I almost told her. Almost. But something in my gut held me back. If Mark knew about the money now, I thought, he'd reappear in a heartbeat. All apologies, all fake promises. And I wouldn't know if it was real or just greed. I needed to know the truth about him without the money clouding everything. "Nothing," I said at last. "It doesn't matter anymore." Rachel didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she let it drop, for now. When she left that evening, I stared at the darkened screen of my phone, Mark's smiling face in my mind alongside the woman in the red dress. The lottery ticket sat in the drawer beside me, silent and still, but its presence was louder than anything else in the room. I had a feeling it wouldn't stay hidden forever. 2 weeks after the accident, Nancy, my favorite day nurse, came into my room wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. "Grace," she said, almost hesitating, "and you have visitors, plural." My pulse skipped. "Visitors?" She nodded. "Your husband and a woman. Says her name is Sofia." The name landed like a stone in my stomach. Rachel's photos flashed in my mind. "I don't want to see him," I said quickly. Nancy stepped closer, her voice softer. "I can send them away if you want, but sometimes facing things head-on gives us the closure we need." Closure. The word felt too final, like locking a door I wasn't ready to shut. But another part of me, the part that had been slowly hardening over the past 2 weeks, told me this was my moment to look Mark in the eye and see him for what he really was. 5 minutes, I said, and I want to be in the chair, not the bed. Nancy nodded and left. I pulled myself upright, wincing at the tug in my ribs, then shuffled over to the chair by the window. I smoothed my hair back, straightened my hospital gown. Ridiculous, maybe, caring how I looked for a man who'd abandoned me. But it wasn't for him, it was for me. The door opened. Mark walked in like he owned the place. 3 weeks since I'd last seen him, and he looked upgraded. A new haircut, a tailored suit, a watch that definitely wasn't the modest Timex I'd bought him for Christmas. Behind him came Sofia, even more beautiful in person than in Rachel's photos. Silky black hair falling over her shoulders, designer jeans, and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Diamonds winked from her ears. "Grace," Mark said, his tone the same one you'd use for a distant acquaintance. "You're looking," he smirked, "like you were hit by a car." I held his gaze. "Yes, that tends to happen when an SUV runs you down." He chuckled, as if I'd told a mildly amusing joke. Still got that sharp tongue. He gestured toward Sofia. "This is Sofia, my fiancée." The word hit like a slap. "We're still married, Mark," I said quietly. "You can't have a fiancé when you have a wife." "Details." He waved a hand dismissively. "The papers will be filed soon. I've been busy." "Too busy to return the hospital's calls for 2 days?" His jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly. "You know how it is. Real business takes priority." "Real business? Like the Morrison meeting the night of my accident? The one that didn't happen because the office was dark?" For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face. Surprise? Annoyance? But it vanished. "Checking up on me? That's pathetic, Grace." He smirked. "No wonder you got yourself into an accident." Before I could answer, Sofia stepped forward, her smile polite, but her eyes curious. "The apartment we looked at has the most amazing view," she said to Mark, as if I weren't even there. "The one with the marble countertops." "The penthouse?" Mark asked. She nodded. "Already put down the deposit," he told her. I turned my gaze to him. "With what money? We could barely pay our mortgage before my accident." "Things change when you remove dead weight from your life," Mark said smoothly. Sofia gave me a once-over, her voice syrupy sweet, but her eyes cold. "Mark said you'd let yourself go the last few years. Stress eating. Though I guess the accident helped with that. You look like you've lost weight." The cruelty was deliberate. I could see it in the way Mark's lips curved slightly upward, like this was entertainment for him. But then something unexpected happened. Sofia kept looking at me, not with superiority this time, but with a kind of intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You know what's really pathetic?" Mark continued, clearly enjoying himself. "You probably thought I'd come running when you got hurt, like some movie. But real life doesn't work that way. When someone's dragging you down, you cut them loose." Sofia's attention never wavered from my face, then suddenly, "Where did you grow up?" The question caught me off guard. "Willow Creek. Why?" Her eyes widened. All of the blood seemed to drain from her face. Her designer purse slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a soft thud. "Oh my God," she whispered. Mark frowned. "What's wrong with you?" But Sofia didn't answer him. She was staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. Her lips parted, and her voice came out unsteady, almost trembling. "You're the one," she began. The door burst open. Nancy stepped in, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Williams, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need you to sign some surgical consent forms. Urgently." Mark stepped forward. "What surgery? I should be—" Nancy cut him off with a cool look. "HIPAA laws, Mr. Williams. I can only discuss medical details with the patient unless she authorizes otherwise." I met her eyes, realizing she was giving me an escape. "We'll talk soon," I told them flatly. Sofia hesitated, still staring at me, but Mark gripped her arm. "Come on, we're leaving." As he pulled her toward the door, she twisted back one last time, her face a mix of recognition and something that looked unsettlingly like guilt. When they were gone, I exhaled a shaky breath. Sofia had been about to tell me something that scared her, and now I couldn't stop wondering what it was. 3 days passed before I saw Sofia again. It was a gray afternoon, the kind where the sky presses low, making the hospital windows look like faded mirrors. I was in the physical therapy room, gritting my teeth through leg exercises when Nancy appeared in the doorway. "That young woman is back," she said carefully. "The one who was here with your husband. She says it's important." My first instinct was to refuse. Whatever Sofia wanted, it couldn't possibly matter enough to risk another round of her carefully polished cruelty. But the memory of her face that day, pale, shaken, her voice catching on "you're the one," wouldn't let me dismiss her. "Send her to my room," I said finally. "I'll be there in 10 minutes." When I returned, Sofia was sitting in the visitor's chair by the window, and she was different. Gone was the glossy, perfectly put-together woman in diamonds and silk. Her hair was pulled back into a plain ponytail, her makeup minimal. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, and the only jewelry I saw were small silver studs in her ears. Without the armor of luxury, she looked younger, softer. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. I eased into my chair opposite hers, keeping my tone cool. "Why are you here, Sofia?" She twisted her hands in her lap, not the gesture of someone rehearsing a performance, but of someone steeling themselves to speak. "Because I need to tell you something about that day you asked about Willow Creek." She hesitated, searching my face. "But first, did you ever volunteer at the women's shelter there about 10 years ago?" The question made my breath hitch. "Yes, for almost 2 years after college, every weekend, until—" My voice faltered, the memory sharp. "Until Mark convinced me it was too dangerous, too much time away from him." Sofia's eyes filled with tears. "I knew it," she whispered. "The moment I really looked at you, I knew, but I couldn't believe it. I studied her, trying to place her in those years." "Should I?" I asked softly. "February, 10 years ago. The worst snowstorm the city had seen in decades," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was 17. I'd been on the streets for 3 months after running away from my uncle's house. And then, like a film reel clicking into focus, I remembered. A teenage girl, painfully thin, shivering in a ripped jacket outside the shelter's locked doors. The snow whipping sideways, biting through clothes like knives. "You saw me," Sofia continued, her voice shaking. "You could have just walked past like everyone else, but you didn't. You took me to your car, gave me the lunch you'd packed for yourself. Then you drove me to Target and bought me a winter coat, gloves, boots, everything, out of your own pocket." The scene was so clear in my mind now that I could smell the cheap hot chocolate I'd handed her in a paper cup. "You got me a hotel room for a week," she said, tears spilling freely now. "Paid for it yourself. Gave me $200 cash and your phone number. You told me if I needed anything, to call you." I swallowed hard. "You never called." I was too proud, too ashamed. But that week saved my life, Grace. I got a job at a diner. Saved up. Got my GED. Community college. She gave a hollow laugh. "I even started a blog about second chances. You were the inspiration. I never named you, but I never forgot." The gratitude in her voice felt like a weight I didn't know how to carry. "And now," I said slowly, "you're engaged to my husband." Her face crumpled. "I didn't know," she said fiercely. "I swear to God, I didn't know. Mark told me his ex-wife was named Emma, that she'd left him, that she was cold and cruel, that she'd taken his money and vanished." I let out a bitter laugh. Emma was his mother's name, and he hated her. "When I saw you lying there in that hospital bed, when I realized who you were, God, Grace, I wanted to sink into the floor. But you didn't say anything," I said, keeping my voice steady even as my pulse thudded. "I was in shock, and Mark—" She stopped, looking out the window. "He's not the man I thought he was. He was charming at first, kind, but lately, the cruelty slips through. The little comments meant to hurt, the way he talks about money constantly." Her gaze flicked back to me. "He's been pushing me to invest my inheritance. My mom died 2 years ago. She left me about $300,000, and Mark's already lined up opportunities he wants me to fund." "Let me guess," I said. "Can't miss investments that need cash immediately?" She blinked. "You know about those?" I gave her a humorless smile. "Funded more than I can count. That's why I was working extra shifts, to pay off the debts from his last 3 brilliant ideas." Sofia was silent for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, her voice lower. "Grace, there's something else you need to know. The night of your accident, Mark was with me, at my apartment. He got a call from the hospital, but he told them wrong number and hung up." The words landed like a blow, even though I'd suspected as much. "When the hospital kept calling," she continued, "he finally told me it was his ex-wife, you, and made it sound like you'd probably been drinking and driving." Her eyes searched mine. "I'm so sorry for all of it. I wanted to hate her. God, it would have been easier. But looking at her now, I couldn't see the diamond-wrapped stranger from the photos. I saw the freezing girl in the snow I'd once tried to save. And I knew this wasn't the end of what she had to tell me." Sofia sat back, took a long breath, and seemed to gather herself. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small black device, a digital recorder. "I've been recording him for the past week," she said, setting it on the rolling tray table between us. "Ever since I started noticing the cracks, the inconsistencies, the way his stories didn't add up." I stared at the recorder. "Why?" Her eyes locked on mine. "Because you saved me once, because I owe you everything, and because I've realized Mark isn't just selfish, he's dangerous. I'm not letting him do to you what he's trying to do to me." She hit play. Mark's voice filled the room, crisp and unmistakable. "She's pathetic, always has been. Best thing about the accident is now I can say she abandoned me. Lawyer friends already agreed to backdate the paperwork. Once that's in place, I take the house, the rest of the assets, what little there is, and walk away clean." My fingers tightened around the arms of my chair. Sofia pressed pause. "He thinks you won't fight him because you can't afford a lawyer." My mind immediately went to the lottery ticket, still hidden in my bedside drawer. $92 million, after taxes, could buy the best legal team in the state. But Mark didn't need to know that. Not yet. "He's planning to commit fraud," I said evenly. She nodded. "And I have more." Another click, and Mark's voice returned. "Sofia's money is the real prize. Grace was a bad investment, but Sofia's inheritance, that's the ticket, and she's naive enough to trust me." Sofia stopped the recording, her face tightening. "He's using me exactly the way he used you. The only difference is I'm catching on before it's too late." I studied her for a long moment. "So what are you proposing?" Her eyes didn't waver. "We take him down. Together. We make sure he can't do this to anyone else." The bitterness in my chest twisted into something sharper. Focus. "You'd be willing to testify?" Every word, every lie, every time he bragged about using people for their money. She leaned forward. "You think he's done this to only us?" "No, he's probably been running this game for years." I exhaled slowly, feeling the idea solidify. Mark thought I was isolated, weak, broke. But now, I wasn't alone. "I have a few ideas," I said carefully, "but they're going to require you to keep playing your role, at least for now." Sofia nodded. "I can do that." There was a moment of silence. Two women sitting across from each other, a wife and a fiancée, united by the same man's betrayal. It would have sounded absurd if I'd heard it in someone else's story, but here we were. I thought of the lottery ticket again, its presence in my mind almost physical. This was bigger than just the money. This was about letting Mark show the full extent of his greed before the trap closed. "When we're done," I told her, "he won't just lose, he'll never be able to run this game again." Sofia's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Good. Let's bury him." Rachel showed up the next morning like a storm cloud in a leather jacket. She didn't bother with small talk. Instead, she tossed a thick manila folder onto my lap. "I know you didn't ask me to do this," she said, crossing her arms, "but after seeing those photos of Mark with that woman, I couldn't sit still, so I hired a private investigator." I glanced at the folder, feeling my pulse quicken. "Rachel." "Don't thank me yet," she cut in. "Just look." I opened it, and the first photo punched the air right out of me. Mark at a hotel bar, leaning in close to a blonde woman in a low-cut dress. The date stamp was from a year ago, an anniversary weekend he'd claimed he had to cancel because of a last-minute conference. Rachel began pulling out more. Mark at a ski lodge with a brunette in a puffer jacket. Mark at an upscale restaurant holding hands with a redhead. Mark at a beach resort, shirtless, grinning, sunglasses reflecting an ocean I'd never seen. 2 years' worth of affairs, Rachel said flatly. Half the so-called business trips were fake. He'd drive 1 or 2 towns over, spend the weekend with whichever fling he was currently entertaining, then come home with receipts for gas and coffee so it looked believable. I swallowed hard, flipping through until I reached a set of documents. Loan agreements. "Rachel," I said slowly, "why is my name on these?" Her jaw tightened. "Because he forged it. You're on the hook for almost $200,000 in loans he took out using your credit information. The investigator traced at least 3 separate applications. Same handwriting, same forged signature." The room tilted slightly, but I kept my voice steady. "So when he said he didn't have money for medical bills..." Rachel's eyes flashed. "He meant he was too busy stealing from you to care." For a long moment, I stared at the folder. The weight of it in my lap felt symbolic, the weight of every lie, every betrayal. I thought about the lottery ticket in my drawer, the one thing Mark had no idea existed. I looked up. "Rachel, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise to keep it secret, at least for now." Her brows furrowed. Of course. I reached for my bedside drawer, pulled out the envelope, and handed it to her. She unfolded the paperwork inside, scanning it once, then again. Her head jerked up. $150 million? I shushed her quickly, glancing toward the hallway. She lowered her voice, but not her incredulity. Grace, do you realize what this means? You can obliterate him in court. That's the plan, I said. But I want him to think I'm broke first. I want him to show exactly who he is when he believes I have nothing. Rachel's expression shifted into something that made me both wary and grateful, a sharp, almost predatory satisfaction. You want to set him up. I want to expose him, I corrected, and I'm not doing it alone. I told her about Sofia, the connection from years ago, the recordings, the fact that she was willing to help destroy him. Rachel's eyes widened as I spoke, but when I finished, she leaned back and let out a low whistle. Grace, this is insane. It's like the universe handed you an avenging angel in designer jeans. I allowed myself a small smile. Then let's put her to work. The three of us met that afternoon. The wife, the best friend, and the other woman. We sat in my hospital room like conspirators in a heist movie. Only our prize wasn't gold bars or jewels. It was justice. Sofia had her laptop open, her screen a grid of audio files labeled with dates and cryptic keywords. I've got him admitting to the forged loans, she said, clicking one open. Mark's voice filled the room. It's easy. Grace doesn't even check the mail half the time. She signs whatever I tell her to. I clenched my jaw. And here, Sofia continued, he's talking about moving money to offshore accounts to keep it out of divorce settlements. Rachel whistled low. That's felony-level stuff. Exactly, I said. But we need him on record being even more explicit, something that would not only destroy him in divorce court, but put him in prison. I glanced at Sofia. Would you be willing to wear a wire? Her answer was immediate. Yes. You'll tell him I contacted you, I instructed, that I'm desperate for money for medical bills. Offer to sign over the house if he pays them. Then, drop a hint about a possible windfall coming my way. Be vague, just enough to make him curious. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes glittering. And if he bites? A slow smile spread across my face. Then we've got him right where we want him. We spent the next 2 hours fine-tuning every detail like we were scripting a play. The difference was, in this performance, our leading man had no idea he was walking into his own downfall. Sofia sat cross-legged in the visitor's chair, scrolling through her phone to find the perfect time to approach Mark. He's got a standing drink with some guys from his gym on Tuesdays. If I catch him before that, he'll be relaxed, less guarded. Good, I said. The more comfortable he is, the more reckless he'll be. Rachel leaned over the tray table with a legal pad, jotting bullet points. Start with sympathy. Tell him you saw me here, and I looked awful. Say I'm scared about paying hospital bills, then ease into offering him the house in exchange for covering them. And the windfall hint? Sofia asked, glancing at me. Make it sound like you overheard it, I said. Something about me getting a payout or inheritance. Don't say how much. Don't even hint that it's huge. Just enough to make him smell money. Sofia's lips curved into a humorless smile. If there's one thing I know about Mark, it's that he'll circle like a shark the second he thinks there's blood in the water. Rachel clicked a pen shut. And you'll be wearing this. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a small recording device with a discreet clip mic. The PI gave me this. Quality's good enough for courtroom playback. Sofia turned it over in her hands, testing the clip against the edge of her blouse. What about after I get him talking? You want me to push? Just enough to make him show intent, I said. Get him to say he'd slow down the divorce, that he'd help me manage the windfall. In other words, get his name near the money. Rachel grinned. And if he goes full greedy monster, even better. Sofia looked between us, her face more serious than I'd seen it. You realize, once I do this, there's no way I can keep up the act with him much longer. He'll know something's wrong. That's fine, I said. We won't need him to. Once you've got the recording, the clock starts ticking. We ran through it again, rehearsing the beats like a scene. Sofia would open with concern, shift to opportunity, then drop the bait. Every line was calculated to feel casual, unplanned, but each word carried weight. By the time she left to prepare, there was a quiet in the room that wasn't exactly calm. Rachel sat back, arms folded, studying me. You know, she said slowly, I've never seen you like this. Like what? Her eyes narrowed slightly, but in approval. Sharp, dangerous, like you're the one steering the ship now. I smiled faintly. That's because I am. That night, the hospital felt different. The corridor lights seemed dimmer, the footsteps of the nurses more muffled, like the building itself was holding its breath. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, picturing Mark's face when he realized the game had flipped on him. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Sofia. He bought it completely. I've got him talking about the loans and the abandonment story. And the windfall hint? He's already curious. Says maybe we should give Grace another chance. My fingers tightened around the phone. 2 hours later, another text. Call me. When I did, she answered in a whisper. Grace, you need to hear this. The recording crackled for a moment, then Mark's voice came through. Smooth, smug, and dripping with condescension. If she's got money coming, maybe I should slow down the divorce. String her along a bit. She's always been clueless about finances. Probably doesn't even know she has to declare assets during proceedings. I could get her to put whatever it is in a joint account, then clean it out. She'd never see it coming. Did you get all of that? Sofia asked. Every word. She hesitated. There's more. He wants to visit you tomorrow. Play the concerned husband. I smiled. Slow, deliberate, sharp enough to cut glass. Tell him visiting hours are from 2 to 4. I'll be ready. The next morning, I made my second most important phone call of the week. The first would come later, but this one was to Richard Hartley, the lottery lawyer. Mr. Hartley, it's Grace Williams, I said, keeping my voice even. I'm ready to claim my prize, but I need to do it quietly for now. No media, no announcement. Absolutely, he assured me. We can keep it confidential until you're ready. When would you like to meet? Tomorrow morning, if possible. I'm still in the hospital, but my friend can bring the documentation. I can come to you, Mrs. Williams, 10 a.m.? Perfect. When I hung up, Rachel was leaning against the doorframe with a coffee. So tomorrow morning, you'll be a multimillionaire, she said. And tomorrow afternoon, you'll be a widow in everything but name. That's the plan, I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it when I said I felt ready. Morning came crisp and clear. Richard Hartley arrived exactly at 10, briefcase in hand, wearing the calm, polished smile of someone used to delivering life-altering news. Rachel stationed herself at the door, keeping watch while I signed the last of the paperwork. Congratulations, Mrs. Williams, Hartley said as he closed the folder. After taxes, you're looking at approximately $92 million. The funds will be in your account by the end of the business day. The number felt almost unreal, a weightless kind of power. Make sure it's secured so my husband can't touch a cent. Already arranged, he assured me. When he left, Rachel helped me out of my hospital gown and into actual clothes, a soft sweater, dark pants. I wanted to look like myself, not a patient. I wanted Mark to walk in and think I was stronger than the last time he saw me. At exactly 2 o'clock, Mark appeared in the doorway, holding a bouquet of carnations, the grocery store kind, cheap and bright. The same carnations I'd told him I was allergic to. Grace, he said warmly, as if the last 3 weeks had been nothing more than a misunderstanding. You look so much better. I've been so worried. Have you? I kept my tone neutral, almost bored. Strange way of showing it. He stepped closer, setting the flowers on the table. I know I've been distant. The stress of work, the pressure, I handled it badly. But seeing you here, thinking I could lose you, it's made me realize what's really important. And what's that? Our marriage, he said, sitting in the chair beside me. Our future together. I almost laughed. Our future? You mean the divorce you're filing? He winced, but quickly recovered. That was a mistake. Sofia means nothing to me. Just a distraction. You're my wife, Grace. The love of my life. The love of your life, who you called a pathetic loser who couldn't cross the street safely, I said, watching the color drain from his face. I was angry, hurt. You'd been pulling away from me. I was working extra shifts to pay off your failed investments, I cut in. But let's skip the revisionist history. Sofia mentioned you heard something about me coming into money. His expression smoothed into something more cautious. Did she? Maybe she misheard. Maybe, I said lightly. But if it were true, if we were about to have a fresh financial start, wouldn't that deserve a fresh start for us, too? That was all the opening he needed. He leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Of course, we could pay off the debts, rebuild, invest in something big. I could manage it for us, make it grow. How much debt are we in, Mark? What? The loans, the credit cards, the investments, how much? He shifted uncomfortably. 40, maybe 50,000. Try 200,000, including the loans you took out in my name without my permission. His eyes narrowed. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? I reached for the folder on my table, because I have copies of the loan documents and photos, you at hotels with other women, date stamps that match the weekends you told me you were working. The mask slipped for just a second. And then there's this, I said, pressing play on my phone. Sofia's recording filled the air, his voice bragging about how easy it would be to get me to put a windfall into a joint account so he could clean it out. Mark stood abruptly, his face twisting. That bitch recorded me. She did more than that, I said coldly. She's willing to testify, along with my best friend, along with a private investigator, and along with Detective Morrison. Detective who? He scoffed, but the flicker of panic in his eyes told me he remembered the name. I smiled. You'll meet him soon enough. Tomorrow, he'd learn exactly how far this setup went, and just how little of his own story he'd been controlling. The morning of the confrontation felt like the calm before a storm, the kind of calm that makes you aware of every sound, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights, the low murmur of nurses at the station, the soft scrape of my pen against paper as I signed the last of the forms Richard Hartley had brought. He sat across from me, briefcase open, his voice smooth and professional. And with that signature, Mrs. Williams, the funds are officially yours. $92 million, deposited into the accounts we set up yesterday, fully protected, not a cent accessible to your husband. Ex-husband, I corrected, my voice steady. Hartley smiled slightly. Soon enough. He slid a slim folder toward me. Here's your private account information, and here, he tapped another envelope, are the details for your new financial advisor and accountant. They're already briefed on the situation. Discretion is part of their job description. I ran my fingers over the envelope, feeling the weight of it. It wasn't just money, it was leverage, security, freedom. Rachel, leaning against the windowsill with her coffee, broke the silence. So, you're officially a multimillionaire. Now all that's left is to enjoy the moment where Mark realizes he's not part of it. The corners of my mouth twitched upward. Oh, I'm going to enjoy it. Hartley stood, closing his briefcase. I'll leave you to prepare. Good luck this afternoon, Mrs. Williams. When he was gone, Rachel moved closer. You ready for this? More than ready. By 1:30, I'd traded the hospital gown for dark slacks and a soft navy sweater. I didn't want to look fragile. I wanted to look like someone Mark couldn't control anymore. My hair was brushed, my posture straight, my face calm, though underneath my pulse thudded with a mix of anticipation and something dangerously close to satisfaction. Rachel adjusted the small recording device tucked into the folds of my sweater. Just in case, she said. It's not like we need more evidence, but hey, overkill never hurt. At exactly 2 o'clock, Mark walked in. Same cheap carnations, same practiced look of concern. Grace, he said warmly, taking a seat beside my bed. You really do look better. I've been so worried. Strange way of showing it, I replied evenly. He launched into his script. The stress of work, the mistakes he'd made, the epiphany he'd supposedly had about what really mattered. I love you, Grace, he finished, reaching for my hand. I want us to start over. Start over? I tilted my head. Like you started over with Sofia. He flinched, but covered it with a soft laugh. Sofia. She was a mistake, a distraction. You're my wife, the love of my life. The love of your life, who you called pathetic, who you mocked to your fiancé, who you planned to bankrupt. His jaw tightened. Sofia's been filling your head with lies. I held up a hand and pressed play on my phone. His voice filled the room, courtesy of Sofia's recording. String her along, get her to put it in a joint account, then clean it out. She'd never see it coming. He froze. You know what's funny, Mark? I said. You were right about one thing. I never saw it coming, but not in the way you think. I leaned forward slightly, my voice low but sharp. I won the lottery, Mark. $150 million. The night of my accident, I was coming to tell you. I was going to split it with you, even in divorce, half, but you couldn't even pretend to care when I needed you. And now, you'll get nothing. His face went slack, the color draining. You're lying. Ask my lawyer, I said, gesturing toward the door. He's the one who just secured the funds. Mark's eyes darted toward the doorway, and that's when Detective Morrison stepped in. Mark's eyes flicked between me, the doorway, and Detective Morrison, like he couldn't decide which one posed the bigger threat. Morrison? His voice cracked. As in the Morrison whose office I was supposedly at the night of the accident? The detective gave him a cool, measured look. Interesting you'd bring that up, Mr. Williams. But no, I'm here about something else entirely. Fraud, forgery, Identity theft, charges that have been building for weeks. Mark laughed, brittle, desperate. This is ridiculous. Grace, you can't. I cut him off. No, Mark, you can't. You can't keep forging my name. You can't keep taking out loans in my credit. You can't keep telling everyone I abandoned you while parading your fiancée around in red dresses and diamond rings bought with stolen money. His mask cracked, the smugness slipping into something uglier. You set me up. No, I said, voice steady. You set yourself up. I just made sure there were witnesses. Rachel stepped forward from the corner, her phone in hand. Plenty of them, actually, including your fiancé, or should I say, former fiancé. Sofia entered then, calm and composed, wearing the same gray sweater she'd worn the day she'd told me about Willow Creek. Her eyes met mine briefly before turning to Mark. I've already given my full statement, she said. Every recording, every text, every email. Everything you said about using Grace's money, about using mine, about using everyone you've ever been with. You think anyone will believe? I don't need them to believe, Sofia interrupted. I have proof. Detective Morrison stepped forward, producing a folded sheet of paper. Mark Williams, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Mark twisted toward me, eyes blazing. 8 years, Grace. 8 years together, and this is what you do to me? No, I said quietly. 8 years I paid for your schemes. 8 years I let you chip away at me until I didn't recognize myself. 8 years of thinking I wasn't enough. This? I gestured around the room. This is me finally remembering that I am. The detective cuffed him. He struggled for one last shot. Sofia won't testify. She loves me. Sofia's laugh was sharp, humorless. Mark, you wouldn't know what love is if it sat in your lap with a diamond ring. The saddest part? Grace would have given you everything. All you had to do was be a decent human being. For the first time since he'd walked in, Mark looked hollow. Not guilty, not remorseful, just stripped bare of the confidence he wore like armor. Detective Morrison gave a light tug on the cuffs. Let's go. As they led him out, his voice rose, part threat, part plea. Grace, you'll regret this. The door shut behind him, cutting him off mid-sentence. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of the heater. Then Rachel let out a slow exhale. Well, that was satisfying. Sofia glanced at me. So, what now? I looked between them, the weight in my chest finally lifting. Now I heal. I pay off the debts he put in my name. I hire the best divorce lawyer in the state, and I start over. Sofia's lips twitched into a faint smile. And the money? I thought of the women's shelter in Willow Creek, of the freezing girl in the snow, and the stranger who'd once handed her a cup of hot chocolate and a way out. First, I'm going to fully fund that shelter, expand it, maybe even start a foundation. Call it Second Chances. Sofia's eyes softened. You're still the same person you were that night. No, I said, I'm stronger now. And for the first time in a very long time, I believed it. Word of Mark's arrest moved through Riverside Heights faster than wildfire on a dry summer day. By the time the evening news ran the story, his business partners had already started issuing statements distancing themselves from him. His family, the same in-laws who had once given me tight smiles and whispered judgments, went radio silent. But in my hospital room, there was no champagne, no gloating celebration. Just me, Rachel, and Sofia, sitting together like the most unlikely trio in the world. Sofia leaned back in her chair, a paper cup of hospital coffee in her hands. You know, she said, if someone had told me a month ago that I'd be plotting with my fiancé's wife to send him to prison, I would have laughed in their face. Rachel smirked. If someone had told me I'd willingly let the other woman in on a takedown plan, I would have slapped them. I smiled faintly. And yet, here we are. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, each of us processing what had happened in our own way. For me, it was a strange mix, relief, exhaustion, and a cautious kind of hope. Sofia set her coffee down. So, when you said you were going to fund the Willow Creek shelter, were you serious? Dead serious, I said. I want it to be more than just a bed for the night. I want a program for women who are starting over, job training, legal aid, financial education. Call it the Second Chances Foundation. Sofia's eyes shone. Grace, that's exactly what you gave me 10 years ago. Rachel raised an eyebrow. And it's what you're giving yourself now. I let that sink in. She was right. This wasn't just about revenge or even justice. It was about reclaiming my own life, a life I'd let Mark steer for far too long. Sofia glanced at the door, then back at me. You know, you don't owe me anything, but if you ever need help running the foundation, I'd like to be involved. I know what it's like to be on both sides of it, the one who needs saving and the one who can give it. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You're not the other woman, Sofia. You were a victim too, and maybe now, you're a friend. Her lips trembled into a smile. I'll take that. Rachel, never one for sentimentality, clapped her hands together. All right, before we all start crying, I think it's time we talk about your next moves. Divorce lawyer, financial advisor, maybe a trip somewhere warm where you can drink something with an umbrella in it. For the first time in years, the idea of the future didn't feel like a heavy weight. It felt open, expansive. I thought of the ocean view house I'd always dreamed of, the travel plans I'd once scribbled in a notebook, the degree I never finished because Mark's business always came first. Now, every single one of those things was possible. Yeah, I said, smiling. It's time to start living again. By the next morning, the hospital felt different. It wasn't the smell of antiseptic or the faint squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum. Those were the same. It was me. Something inside me had shifted. Nancy came in with her usual warm smile. Heard you had quite the day yesterday. You could say that, I replied. That handsome husband of yours isn't coming back to visit? She teased lightly. I smiled, a small, private smile. Ex-husband. And no, he's got a new address for the next 5 to 10 years. Nancy chuckled. Good riddance to bad rubbish. She paused, then tilted her head. You know, Grace, the first day you came in, when he wouldn't show, when you said those awful things he'd told you, I didn't think you were pathetic. I thought you were the strongest woman I'd ever seen. The words caught me off guard. I didn't feel strong. Power isn't about feeling strong all the time, she said gently. It's about standing up even when you're on your knees. You did that yesterday, and you didn't do it alone. That's not weakness, Grace. That's wisdom. After she left, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I wanted. It rang 3 times before my mother answered. Grace, we just got back from the cruise. How are you, sweetheart? Mom, I said, sinking back into the chair. I have so much to tell you, but first, sit down. I told her everything. The accident, Mark's betrayal, the lottery, his arrest. She gasped. She cursed under her breath. She laughed in disbelief. When I finished, she was crying. My brave girl, she said. Do you need us to come? Not yet. Let me get out of the hospital first. But Mom, I'm going to be okay. For the first time in years, I'm really going to be okay. You're more than okay, she said. You're free. That word echoed in my head long after we hung up. Free. Free from the constant second-guessing. Free from the weight of his debts and his lies. Free from being defined by someone else's version of me. Tomorrow, the media would run the story of the lottery winner who exposed her cheating husband's crimes. My phone would blow up with calls and texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. There would be attention I never asked for and more decisions to make than I could imagine. But tonight I was just Grace. Not Mark's wife, not a victim, not even a lottery winner. Just Grace, a woman with her own story, her own choices, and a horizon wide open in front of her. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.